Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. And Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, sir?
I am doing well, and I would like to visit again on the subject of Syria. Syria is still around, and they're still trying to start a war. Yeah. Like the war's been going on for a long time, but what we're frightened about is they're going to escalate it, and it's going to get out of control. But you know, it's almost a continuous story. You know what's been going on, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or whatever. An incident will occur, and somebody will get blamed. It's usually a false flag. Right now, recently, it's all been in Syria, and Assad did it. Even back with Obama, a gas attacks, Assad did it. No proof at all, and it lasts for weeks and weeks. Can go on, and they build up this animosity, and the propaganda machine has been pretty prolific, and it satisfies a lot of people that Russia really are the monsters who are trying to cause all the trouble. But then the Skripal event occurred. The father was the double agent, a Russian, was so-called poisoned in London along with his daughter, and it had to have been Russia because it was this Novichok gas, deadly, the worst ever in the world. So they put that out there, and guess what? I think you don't have to guess. Their argument that it was all Russia's fault has fallen through. So they quit talking about it. And they lied about this. And I think what's going on here is the United States and the anti-Assad people have lost the war. And they're very, very desperate. So they're striking out to stir up this trouble. And so that fell through. So they had to have another gas attack. I imagine that's about the third or fourth time they've used gas as the issue, because that's the red line. Oh, if he uses gas against his own people. So the argument is, the way the people that perpetuate these false flags is that Assad is gassing his own people. At the same time, he's winning the war, and the people are flocking back in to go to the territories that he has returned to the government of Syria. But nevertheless, he's out there gassing his own people, which makes no sense whatsoever. And fewer and fewer people are believing this. But unfortunately, the people who control our bombs and our weapons and our allies, go along with it. Well, anyway, they had to come up with something new. So it's another gas attack in East Ghouta, and pictures and all, and white helmets, and they explained it. Oh, Assad's killing his own people again. Enough where, whether it was connected or not, I don't know, but then there was the incident over the weekend where it looks like the Israelis bombed up near Homs, I guess, but it turns out that that's about their 100th mission up there. But anyway, it's all is connected there, and now, of course, we've just sort of have already started to recover from bringing the troops home. That lasted for 3 or 4 days, 5 minutes, right? So here it is. It looks like the bosses, the deep state, had different ideas, and we have no idea what the true motivations were of Donald Trump. Was he serious, or is this a ploy, or what's going on? But anyway, it's irrelevant, because now we got to go get him. And Trump's using not soft words anymore. He says, these guys are going to pay. So where do you think we stand on this? When do you think our troops are coming home?
Well, I think it was Pat Lang, our old friend who runs Six Semper Tyrannis, who said, why doesn't Trump simply pick up his phone and talk to the person who's on watch at the CIA or NSA and ask them, do you have any evidence that this happened? Rather than sitting there watching TV. And the neocons, it's a constant stream of neocons on TV playing it as a gospel, but we don't know anything about the attack. The only word, as you suggested earlier, the only thing we have is a report from the white helmets. And of course, they're portrayed in the U.S. as the good guys. But people need to understand this. They were founded by James Le Mesurier, who was a MI6 officer, a British intelligence officer with USAID money, $23 million. They started with USAID money. It's now funded by primarily the US and UK governments. Their website is run by a rebel or affiliated PR company, the Syria campaign. They are clearly in the camp of we must overthrow Assad. And so here they come out once again for the third major time saying chemical attack, chemical attack. And nobody questions two things. Is there any evidence? A, and B, why would Assad, on the verge of victory, suddenly decide, things are going too well for me. I'm about to win this war. I better release some gas just to make everyone hate me and want to invade me. It's so preposterous.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the bigger picture, and we've talked about it, the strife between the Sunnis and the Shia, Saudi Arabia and Iran. I think this is where the real battle is, but we're in the middle of that too, because there's no doubt since Trump has become president, he's pretty close allies with the Saudis now, and we're allies with him in the war in Yemen. So it's the same old story. It's this big fight. Oil is instrumental here in this, and they're getting serious. But still, what we fear and what generally will happen is nobody's going to surrender. You're not going to. You'd think that maybe we'd walk away eventually, like we did in Vietnam, but no, it keeps going and going. But with this illicit bombing. So it's known now, it's been reported, and it's probably true that Israel has bombed us in Syria 100 times. They're not going to quit doing that, especially if it looks like Assad's winning, which they'll say, well, Iran's winning, so we have to keep doing it. But what if they annoy Putin one of these days? He's not going to be a softy and a forgiving person and say, oh, well, I guess that's too bad that they're doing this. Because he's put a lot into this, and no matter how you look at it, if you look at international law, he's probably much closer to following the law than the rest of them. But what happens if he gets really upset, and even if he hits something major of the United States, whether it's on purpose or not? That's big stuff, and that can always happen because they're not going to give up on what they won back for Assad. And all Assad has asked for was, I've been in charge and I was responsible for Syria. And right now, I think the evidence is fairly strong, except for pockets, that the people have been favorable toward Assad, and so he has support. But this could change rather rapidly. It could change today. There's been a hint that Trump might do something today, that something big is going to happen. It's not going to be a softie. So it's very much in flux, and who knows? Before the end of the day, there may be another major event going on.
I think there may well be. And you mentioned the Israeli strike overnight against the T4 base in Syria. That's halfway between Damascus and Palmyra. That is a base. Two things about that base are important. First of all, Russians frequent that base. They are in and out of that base. They could have easily been hit and killed. I think that has got Russia irritated with Israel. They generally have pretty good relations with Israel, but I think this is going to be a tough one for them. And the second one is this base is directly involved in fighting ISIS. So essentially by Israel attacking this government military base, they are flying air cover for ISIS. I mean, it's now out in the open. These guys, it's not a Hezbollah base. This is a Syrian government base fighting ISIS, and the Israelis hit them. So I think they've showed their hand as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't quite realize how ISIS came about, because who wants to believe it? I had such a struggle trying to understand World War II and the bombing of Pearl Harbor and what went on there, strategically bringing the people together. And they allow these things to happen. And this whole idea that we could perpetuate, that we're over there for one reason, to kill ISIS, and yet we help create ISIS. At the same time, we support them because ISIS wants to get rid of Assad, and that's been our goal. And regardless of, what we hear from the White House, because we don't know what day of the week it is, and it goes back and forth. But right now, I think the theme coming out of the White House is much more aggressive. I don't think you're going to hear any more noise about bringing the troops home. I think that was just sort of thrown out there and sort of try to satisfy the people who would like to see us come home. But the other political question is, and some people have suggested, that Donald Trump's base is not going to like this because the base wants them to come home. But You know, I'm not positive about that, because when I've run into some of the newer Tea Party people and the people that like Trump, we're pretty hawkish people. So it's not like they're going to be satisfied. But any way, all the propagandists have to do is we're being attacked and our national security is at threat. We have to protect liberty. And the people are going to roll over and say, well, they're right. You just can't ignore it. And then they'll support the acceleration and more fighting over there.
Yeah, more macho.
Yeah.
But you know, in the Moon of Alabama had a good piece up, I think, today about the patterns of these major chemical attacks. And they fits the same pattern. In 2013, the famous Ghouta attack, where Obama was just about to go in but pulled back at the last moment. This attack took place just as UN inspectors arrived in Damascus to investigate claims that al-Nusra, which is al-Qaeda, had used chemicals. So just as the UN inspectors got there, boom, Assad decides to gas his people, okay? And then remember last year in 2017, in April, actually almost to the day, a year to the day, that was just days after Nikki Haley, U.S. ambassador to the UN, said, regime change, getting rid of Assad is no longer a priority for the United States. Boom. A couple days later, a chemical attack. Right after it, the response by Trump, we got to get rid of Assad. The same thing happened now, just a few days after Trump said we got to get out of Syria soon. Boom, another chemical attack. Now you have Trump talking about escalating and more invasion. So it's over and over and over the same pattern. You'd think people would put two and two together.
And the people go along, and they always ask, well, you just can't walk away. Yeah. And I don't think they get the other side of it. We try to answer that, but they think walking away is just like committing suicide. It's in our interest. We need to do it. Putin's going to take over the world, you know, this sort of thing. So say the emotions of the American people go along with this. I still suspect that when they have the facts, the people would be with us. The problem is how do we reach the people, you know, and give them the information to let them realize that, you know, there's a lot more going on over there. Besides, this whole argument could be, you know, non-intervention means we wouldn't be in the middle of that. Then you say, well, is Putin the bad guy, or is it the Israelis, the bad people bombing them? Is it the Iranians? You know, back and forth. But if we're not even there, it's a mess there. Why are we absolutely obligated to pick and choose? Because picking and choosing, you know, both sides are going to have some shortcomings. And just getting involved is what destroys our national security. That's where we lose out. We lose out financially, and we are less secure. And I do believe that blowback is a real event. And now, I remember, I think it was bin Laden that said, now it'll be easy to kill Americans. They'll be over here fighting on our soil. So they're still undermining us. And his other goal was to bankrupt America. Yeah, you know. So it goes on and on. This whole idea of if we're not there, that we're moral cowards and we have to pick sides. Well, I think that it's not being a moral coward to say that we're strong enough to defend ourselves if somebody attacks us.
Yes. Well, I would, if I can just close with a couple of quick points. Number one, as you mentioned earlier, we just saw Zero Hedge tweeted before we started the show that Trump is expected to make a decision today as to what he'll do. He says they're going to pay a big price. Ian Bremmer from the Eraser Group mentioned, here's what he said: as long as Russians on the ground are not directly threatened, Putin's not likely to take action to retaliate if we go in big. Well, what if he's wrong? That's a question. What if he's wrong? I think that Russia, from what I've read, from what I'm hearing, I think if the U.S. goes in big and Russia is threatened in Syria, I think that Russia will retaliate. I think we will see some kind of a military strike. They've already said if whoever launches missiles into Syria, we will hit where they're launched from. They've already said that. They're not big on bluffing. So I think they will retaliate if the U.S. strikes big. So I would just close finally by saying, we don't do this very often here, but I honestly think now is the time to call the White House switchboard, to call your representative, call their Washington office and their district offices, and tell them politely, but very clearly and forcefully, we do not want World War III started over Syria today or tomorrow.
Well, the people got involved in when Obama was going to retaliate, against the so-called gas attack. And the people spoke out, and the Congress didn't want to do it, and they wouldn't give them the support. So it's not like it's a futile attempt, but you have to have, a lot of people. But none of us are perfect. But tell you, Daniel, I sure hope you're wrong.
I hope so too.
Yeah, you need to be wrong. But I fear the fact that you're probably going to be right, because eventually that's going to happen. There's going to be an overreaction. And it's sort of building today. It could happen today. It could happen tomorrow. So who knows what. But that's the reason why I think we try to stick to our guns, that non-interventionism is not being unpatriotic. It's not being un-American. It's not being against peace. And it's not being against prosperity. It's exactly the opposite. It's the protection of liberty for a country that should set as an example for the world, and how a person could live and people could live peacefully around the world. I'll tell you, we've heard many a story of people who have lived in the Middle East talking about how Muslims and Jews and Christians got along a lot better than they get along today, because it's just totally destructive ever since we decided we were going to remake the Middle East. And that's what was said after 9/11. The Neocons said, that gives us an opportunity to remake the Middle East. We'll start with Afghanistan. Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And then claim that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11. And all that based on lies, and we're talking about lies again, once again, false flags and lies. There's no legitimacy in this whole thing of accepting these lies in order to just go to another war. So people should be held accountable. The one thing that the people in this country, and we shouldn't lie, but the greatest crime in this country today is if you lied to a government agent. But why don't we hold our feet to the fire of the people in Washington, the people who lead us, lying to the people? That's what we have to stop. And they lie constantly, whether it's on economic matters or civil liberty matters or on foreign policy. We need to hear the truth, and that is our goal, to try to find the truth, seek the truth, and perpetuate the truth, rather than accepting this pressure and the propaganda to go along and pretend that is what is best for America. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.